is youtube.com/Patricia Shanks Voice. This is about the fifth or sixth installment, I think. And I'm just talking a little bit about things that singers might want to know. I think some things that singers should know, and other creative types as well. And I had a plan for today. My plan sort of went another direction. So we'll see how this little topic goes. Let me give you some of my commercial before I forget. I tend to be the worst at promoting myself. But let's see where you can find me. On Facebook, my Facebook page is Patricia Shanks Music. On Instagram, I'm Patricia_Shanks, I think. I'm also on Snapchat. I still haven't figured that out. That's been a couple of weeks since I signed up, and I don't know what that's all about. So find me there, Patricia Shanks. Somehow it looks like me. And where else am I? Twitter, I'm Studio Shanks. And my websites are studioshanks.com and ocvocalcoach.com. Or you can kind of find your way to those sites and other sites by visiting patriciashanks.com. Okay, I think that's enough of that. So I'm a voice teacher here in Orange County, California, and I felt the need for some time to just discuss some of the things that kind of weigh on me when I'm teaching voice and really can't be discussed with students in lessons. There isn't enough time. Sometimes it's not appropriate. It's just too much information, or just not relating to whatever it is that we're doing in the lesson. So the thing that was weighing on me recently is, I've been teaching since 1973, officially since 1975, but I've been teaching a long, long time. And I'm still learning. There's still so much to learn about working with people, about what motivates students, and what motivates those who are families of students. And there's just a lot of the psychology of dealing with people. And whenever you're teaching anything, it's all about people. It's so much more about the people than it is about the subject that you're teaching. If you can figure out what the people are all about, then what you're attempting to get across to them kind of starts to take care of itself. So I was thinking back about in the early days, into the 1980s. Oh, here we go with her war stories. How much more innocent students were about their study. They came to the lesson, and whatever the teacher assigned them, they did. If it was some sort of a folk song, or something of a classical nature, and they were still not really interested in classical, that's kind of the way it worked. And teachers usually assigned material, at least in my experience and what I used to do, that's based on the level of ability the student is at. And for a long time, I would try to assign folk songs, things like "The Water is Wide" is a beautiful folk song, and that teaches how to use breath and how to sustain phrases over a long period of time, and a bunch of other things. Just some really good material. Well, as popular culture sort of took over, and some other things, I don't even know all of what has gone on that has changed over the decades. But as things have changed, students are less inclined to take the time to do what the teacher is requesting of them, to understand that it does take time to develop skills, and to do assigned material. Students, especially now, come in with the idea of what they want to sing, how they want to sing it, and I'm not really sure sometimes why they're coming to lessons, other than they seem to think that lessons, technical lessons, they relate that to song coaching, which is another thing. There are voice teachers and voice coaches. Sometimes the two come in one package. But in the old days, especially, you used to study with a technique with a voice teacher, a technician, and then you would take your song material to a voice coach who would help you put the little finishing touches and doodads and good things on it that make it a polished performance. There was some crossover, but and that had a lot to do with classical and musical theater, and also for the elite performers with some popular styles and jazz. But anymore, it's expected to be in one package. The problem that I see is that students want to pass over technique. They just don't have the patience for it. They don't have the interest in it. And part of it is there's a lack of understanding of its importance. So they tend to, want to just jump to singing the song material. Although sometimes they'll say, yes, I really want to learn how to sing better. I want to, want to work on these things. And one cute kind of thing that happens is we will work intensively on a particular couple of techniques to help them get through some issues in their songs. And this comes up every once in a while. So we'll do that. And then as we start singing the song, and I know I'm explaining that this is what it's for, they'll say, so how do I hit that high note? Or how do I do that? Or how do, and I'm thinking, that's what we just went over. So there's some kind of a disconnect there. And, and I have to figure out how to explain to the students how working on that little piece of technique, that little section, and then applying that idea to that piece of the song will help them get where they want to get with that song. So anyway, I was going to talk about the innocence of what voice study used to be in the 70s and the 80s, and not so much into the 90s, but that's when things really started changing. And then I realized, hence the title of this, if you're depending on where you're finding it, that there is a problem. There's kind of a gap of what we are doing, what the student and the teacher are trying to do now, and what the student expects on the other end. The gap is this big ravine in between where, there might be an ideal of, I want to, I'd love to one day perform on stage with a band, something kind of nebulous, something kind of unformed, not specific. And there's not an intermediate set of goals or steps to help the student get from point A to point B. And that's one of my jobs that I have to start working with students on is filling that gap so that they don't feel disheartened, so that they can see that they're making progress. By the way, I have a bunch of notes here that I'm just ignoring, but I may resort to them in a moment, but sometimes I'm better off not reading my notes. Anyway, to help students figure out small, sensible steps where they can accomplish things and understand that the small steps are the steps that will get them to the big places that they might want to be. Now, the problem with ideals are not goals. Wanting to be like a superstar is not really a goal. That's sort of a fantasy. I'm not saying it can't happen, but you don't start from, I'm taking lessons this week, and then, I hope a couple of years from now I'm up there as a star. I'm up there fronting a band or whatever they want to do, singing on stage in a musical, hitting Broadway. These kinds of odd things can happen, but for most people, you have to pay your dues. You have to do a lot of work. You have to kind of go through the frustration and the process, and this is another thing, this process. We have to appreciate the process rather than just sort of put up with it, and so that we can get to that fantasy goal. You have to accept the work that you have to do. Let me look at my notes for a second here because it could only help at this point. Okay, some of the things, there are a plethora of things that I think are causing some some issues in lessons. One of the things is the wonderful internet and social media. What a wonderful tool that can be, might have been. But social media is draining everyone of their time, and it's making them competitive with others when we should only take care of ourselves. We shouldn't worry about what other people are doing. Oh, what they're wearing, I have to wear that. Where are they performing? I have to do the same thing. It's exhausting to try to be all things to all people, and not take care of yourself first. Cultural norms, and anti-intellectualism. I think that's a major issue. We are taking in music that's very easily digested, and it's pleasurable, but we don't have to think too much about it. And there's a huge rejection of critical thinking and embrace of things that are very simplistic. And when we do that, then we don't have a huge desire to sit down and study and learn something, because our time is filled with all of this fun and games. But really, what really honestly makes us happy is accomplishment. It's not being told we're wonderful, but it's knowing that we've learned and accomplished something. That feels solid. But if we're just spending all of our time with social media and running around and absorbing all of this stuff that's really not of much substance, then we're not really happy. We don't get to that place where we've learned something and we feel like we own something, and we can prove to ourselves that we're improved, that we're new and improved. Let's see, what else did I say to myself earlier? And why do it? Okay, why do these things? Why do we study? Okay, if it's not going to make us a fortune, and chances are it won't, and if it's not going to make us famous, and chances are it won't, why do we do it? We have to do this because of the love of learning and the love of being a performer who can perform anywhere, and with or without an audience, and just love the music that we're making. Okay, there's more to it than that, but we can't have those unrealistic goals as our primary goals. We have to look inside ourselves and determine why it is that we're doing what we're doing, and make sure that it's sensible. Okay, I hope that's making sense. It does to me. Let's see. So what's this gap that I'm talking about? Okay, again, the gap is the middle place. The gap is where we don't set those intermediate goals, and we find ourselves stuck because we're not up on stage performing, with the Grand Opera or wherever, and we don't feel like we've improved. We don't feel like we've gone anywhere because we didn't set a goal, so we don't know where we've been or where we're going. So we're stuck in the middle. Leads to just complete unhappy. That doesn't work. You need to have some kind of goals and a measurable way of knowing if you've done something. Now, one of the things that we're often encouraged not to do is to look back. Always look forward, look ahead. Don't look back. Well, no. You have to look back to see where you've been, to know if you've made any progress. So, as singers, we make music. We have ways of doing that. We can record ourselves. We can take notes. We can go, oh yeah, I've learned how to do that. My goodness, I've increased my knowledge. I've increased my range. I'm getting that technique that was just so difficult a few months ago. And by the way, if we don't record those things, we do forget them. We have a tendency to forget. What do we tend to remember? We remember sometimes the really, really good, really outstanding good things that happen in our lives, and we understand the really bad thing, or understand, and we remember the really bad things that happen in our lives. But the stuff of life that's in between, we tend not to remember. So if you don't jot it down or record it and listen back to it and read it back, you don't know if if where you've been and where you are is better than where you've been, and if you're on a path to the next goal. So do look back. You really have to look back to make sure that you are making progress. Um, let's see. Yeah, set small goals, very specific and measurable goals. Make them make sense. Okay. And oh, pat yourself on the back. You know, work for your. I think I've said this in past ramblings. Work for yourself in your own time. Make your own progress. Okay. Another thing that used to be, we used to have the luxury of time. I remember going to lessons. I remember seeing other people in their lessons, you know, when I was a young person in the 1970s, you know, going to my lessons and seeing how people worked calmly, worked focused. Other things that strike me, that are in my memory, are the quiet of the environment. We have such a loud environment. This is taxing on our nervous system. Find your quiet time to study. Find your quiet time to make your sounds in a quiet space. Okay? Get rid of the din. The din doesn't serve you. But take your time. Take time. Make time, and you'll be rewarded with growth and improvement and success. But if you don't take the time, if you are running around, if your time is being absorbed with social media, with things that are less meaningful, then the time will pass, the years will pass, and you'll say, "Gee, I never did this. I never advanced. I never made a difference in my singing." And so I think those are, I'm trying to think if there's anything more exciting. I see lots of sometimes I have to take a breath because people are so driven or are so wound up, and I'm not even sure how to explain it, but everybody just take a breath. I remember one time years and years and years ago when I went out and taught in homes. I was actually teaching piano to a family, and this was an extended family that all lived in one home: the grandparents, the parents, and the children. And I would give one of the two children a piano lesson while the other one was in doing homework. There was no TV going, there was no radio, there was no nothing. The mother was an attorney, and she was sitting there working on her legal briefs while helping the one who wasn't having a piano lesson with his or her homework. And the grandparents were in the kitchen making the dinner, and it was a fluid thing. The next child came up, had their lesson, and everyone seemed quite happy. They weren't missing anything. This was, of course, before all of the cell phones and social media and everything. This was early on. And well, they are wonderful devices, wonderful tools. Look at what I can do now. And hopefully, somewhere in the thick of all of this, where I'm just rambling today, there's something that speaks to someone. That's my intent. But they're wonderful tools, but they're also major distractions. And so, just like we don't want to overeat or have other bad habits that cause us grief. We have to watch the distractions and force ourselves, and then it becomes a good habit to take the time to do something that's going to be more meaningful in our lives. So I guess that's it. That all came from my interest in trying to get back to more innocence, more openness from students in voice study, so that the material I give them is something that they accept and understand, that this is something that's going to help them. And I, again, I really don't know what that's all about. I'm always learning. Hopefully I'm always improving as a teacher and mentor. And I think that's it for today. Ay, ay, ay. So thank you so much for listening and watching, and please please find me on all of those social media sites and like me, follow me, whatever you can do, subscribe to me. And I do teach music at Laguna Hills Music in Laguna Hills and Neil Music Instruction in Anaheim, near Anaheim Hills in that area. So I'd love to have you talk with me about lessons and see if there's some way that we can set that up for